Hey everybody, Ruby here with another art lesson for you. Today we're going to be creating a collage landscape. So I used this photo of the Bixby Bridge as my inspiration to create my own collage piece. So a collage is generally an art piece made from different elements, different pieces. So in this type of collage, I've used different types of collage paper that I've made. These are a lot of old art pieces or demos, or just the way I like to use extra paint once I have it. And you guys will have a bunch of different papers you can choose from, like pattern papers, and you're also welcome to look around your house or school for different types of recycled papers that you might like. So I like to do a lot of different kind of freeform collages. Like I just cut these pieces out in whatever forms I liked and try to put the pieces together in one composition. So the composition is the way all of the pieces fit together. So here are just some different examples of some kind of more freeform landscape pieces. So I kind of just cut the shapes from the mountains, put them on a background, and tied it all together. So you can kind of see what these might look like. So you guys are welcome to create your own freeform collage composition like this, but I'm going to show you how to break it down using a photo as inspiration. So the same way that we do when we paint a landscape, we're going to try to simplify this down to its most basic shapes. So I'm going to think about what shape the ocean is. Okay, so I'm outlining the different shapes or edges that create the ocean. So now I know that's kind of this shape. I can go along the horizon line to find the shape of the sky. So that's going to be this shape. I can label them. I can even give them numbers if I want to. So I'm figuring out the most basic shapes. See, this is a little piece of land. I see this could kind of all be one shape. This kind of pyramid-shaped mountain could be one shape. I want to try to have less than 10 shapes, whatever I do. I see that the bridge has a straight line, kind of comes down, and then is cut off by this piece of the foreground, so that's almost like a triangular shape. Let me give that a number also. Then this block of land can be one shape. This piece becomes one shape. And then the foreground is this big shape here, and our water is this shape here. So from there, I'm creating a puzzle. So I then cut these pieces apart carefully with my scissors. I'm going to need every piece, so I don't want to cut into any of those other shapes when I'm creating the sky, for example. Being really careful with my scissors to just cut out that shape of the sky. That becomes its own piece. The water can become its own piece, kind of starting with the big pieces first. And I'm turning the paper rather than turning my scissors. Makes it a little bit easier for me to cut, and that way I make sure I'm always cutting away from my body. If anything goes wrong in this process, you can always tape the pieces back together. There's my water. This is a really big piece, this foreground piece, so I'll cut that out. The foreground is the area that's closest to us in the landscape. So that's a big chunk. So you can see it's really just like creating a puzzle. And I said a maximum of 10 shapes would really be be ideal. I don't want to have so many that it's a really intricate puzzle. I want it to be nice and simple. So, and I'm just kind of assembling these back on my landscape photo so that I can keep track of them. I don't want to lose these little pieces, and that way I know where each one of them is going to go. And I'm kind of getting to know my landscape. So there we have all the pieces. So these are going to be templates for the puzzle pieces that I use to make my collage. So I want to think about what color I want each of these shapes to be. So for example, in my finished piece that I just did, I kind of created a little bit of a twilight look with a pink sky. So you could do something like that. You could use a blue sky if you wanted to. You could think about how artists use the colors to create the time of day or the type of day. So I have a nice big piece of this magenta, so maybe I'll use that for my sky. It's kind of an exciting color. So what I'm going to do is take my template, or the piece that I just created, and I'm going to outline that on my piece of paper. I want to make it a little bit larger than the template. You can see I'm tracing kind of around it, because I want to be sure that the pieces have enough space to overlap, so there are no gaps where the white of the paper underneath is shining through. Okay, so I'm going to cut out each piece. And again, I'm cutting carefully to make sure that when I put my puzzle together, the pieces will really line up. So I'm going to choose color by color to create the puzzle of the landscape. So you can kind of see how that's going to work. Now, as I chose my colors, I was trying to think about how space is created in a landscape. And I'll show you here in this photo. So when we're looking at a landscape, we see that there's distance or atmosphere in this piece. This looks very close to me, and this looks like, as I walk into the picture, this looks very far away from me. So one way to create this idea of atmosphere or space in the composition is that anything that's close to me could be contrasty or bright colors or very different colors. Anything that's further away might be lighter or more faint or more dull, not as bright, and that will let it sink back into the background. So you can see I kind of chose my colors in this piece to let this light yellow green kind of push back. And then we can also think about how the time of day might reflect in the water. So I used a little bit of a purpley color to show the water because I have some pink in the sky. So I wanted that to sort of reflect. All right, so I'm continuing to cut out my pieces, and we can call this a template, the piece that we cut to find our shape. When I'm using a template, I want to try not to waste too much paper, so I'm going to find the edge of the color that I want, so I'm not just putting it in the middle, because then we end up with a lot of wasted paper. So if it makes it easier for you while you're doing this, you can tape the piece down to trace around it, but I'm just kind of holding it in place with one hand and tracing with another hand. Then I set my template aside, And to make my cutting easier, I'm going to just cut off the part that I need and put this giant rest of that sheet aside. And then I can get a little bit closer to make more precise cuts. Cutting that piece off. And then I'm kind of keeping all my little tiny scraps in a pile of trash, and then I'm putting the bigger pieces of paper in a pile that could be used again as I'm working, just to try to keep things a little bit more neat and tidy. So as I've been working, I've been keeping my template and the color that I cut from it together so that I know which pieces I'm looking at and which pieces I'm working with. Then I can refer back to my landscape and I can try to find those pieces. So I know, okay, here's my bridge. This is the piece that goes under the bridge. This is the piece that goes next to the bridge. This is that mountain that's behind. This is my shape of the water. So I'm just trying to get a feel for where everything's going to be. This is the shape that's my sky. And it's really just like a puzzle. Here's a little sliver of that ridge that's back there. Got this piece here. So I'm trying to figure out where everything's going to be. Just really casually figuring everything out. So now it's time to glue these pieces down. So I have a really nice piece of watercolor paper, which is really nice and thick. So this has a smooth side and a rough side. I probably want to use the rough side for my gluing right now. And I'm going to start with what's furthest away to glue. So that would be my sky, which it would be behind everything. So I'm using this really nice paste called Yes Paste that's really thick. So I don't need too much, and I don't want it to squeeze out the edges. I don't want to be able to see it. So I'm just kind of putting a little bit of thin paste all over the back, especially in the areas where I really am going to need it to stick down, like the corners. Okay, and I'm going to turn that over and place that down. And I know that that goes right up to the edges. So this Yes Paste sticks pretty quickly. So I'm just going to hold it down for just a minute, and then I'm going to think about which shape comes next. I think that the water would be a good shape to put next because the land masses are going to sit on top of that. So some of this thicker paper wants to bend, so I'm just going to try to make sure that it sits flat before I go to glue it. You can just put little dabs of that glue too. It doesn't have to cover the entire back. Just so that it's in the places where I'm going to need the paper to stick. Okay. So we're going to continue gluing all of our pieces just like a puzzle. And if you forget where you are, you always have your photo to refer to. But I'm trying to work from what's behind to what's in front. So this goes behind this piece, so it needs to be glued first. I don't want to glue this piece and then this piece on top of it. So I'm starting with what's furthest away. Alrighty, so I'm gluing all my pieces together. Again, I started from what's furthest away and worked my way forward. And I'm making sure that I'm putting enough glue to keep it stuck down, but not so much that it squeezes out the edges, because I don't want to see the glue. And I'm using this Yes Paste with a brush, or you can use a Q-tip or a popsicle stick will work also. So I'm making sure to glue all my pieces down and making sure that there's no white spaces showing in between. That's why I cut my pieces a little bit larger than the template so that they could overlap a little bit and I won't be stuck with little bits of the white paper showing through. When your paper is really thick, it's a little bit harder to get it to stick down. So you can press and hold it for 20 seconds, or you could put something on top, like a glass or a jar, something that won't stick to it but is heavy, or a rock. That would work too if you want to leave it to dry. So I'm making sure that all my pieces are stuck in place and that I really like my composition. And then I can start thinking about adding details to tie it together. So you'll want to wait for this to dry, and it might, take a few hours. You might even want to wait till tomorrow or the next day to come back and add details. But you can see how I've done that with some oil pastels, and I got my inspiration from the photo. I saw that there are these beautiful lupins kind of in the foreground, so I added some of those, and that makes this look closer. I really liked all the extra bright white lines on the bridge, so I added some of those in. I even started looking for values to try to make this look a little bit more three-dimensional. The values are the lights and darks. So we can start to look for some of those things. And I added these with oil pastel. So again, we were talking a little bit about value. I see that this mountain looks 3D because this part of it is darker. So maybe I'll choose a little bit of a darker color with my oil pastel to add in a little bit of shadow on the side of that mountain. And that's going to make it feel a little bit more 3D. I noticed there are these same kind of valleys along in the background, so I can add a little bit of shadow in those areas too. Make that feel a little bit more 3D. I also see this here under the bridge and alongside the bridge. There's some more dark shadows. So that's going to make it feel like it's kind of like a little cave under there. I also noticed that there's this beautiful white along the shoreline. The sea foam there is really beautiful. So I could add some of that in. Kind of goes all along the shoreline. And that might look white or light blue also. I can add some other ripples in the water. Make it look a little bit more like the surf. And again, I can look for those details in the foreground. So I see some really big leaves here. So maybe I can draw some shapes of big leaves. I can draw those beautiful flowers that I see. And I'm not drawing every single petal or every single leaf. I'm giving an idea of what it looks like with some different marks that I'm making with my oil pastel. And it doesn't have to just be one color. Can make it look a little bit more three-dimensional by adding lights and darks to those also. And the same way, I noticed that there are kind of dark shadows underneath the leaves. So that might be a way to make this look more 3D. Could create some texture of grasses. So that's up to you. However you want to add your details in, however you want to make it your own, make it look a little bit more developed, more 3D, you can add your details in. And you'll notice from there, any areas that are just plain smooth kind of look like they want a little bit more attention. So I can just put some kind of little textural marks in there. All right, so we've created our collage composition landscape by taking different pieces of collage paper to create an overall composition like a puzzle of this landscape. So I want to look at my landscape, look at my photo, look at my landscape, look at my photo, see if there's anything else that needs a little bit more attention, anything else I want to bring out. Like I really like the details in the bridge. So I think I want to bring some of those details out. It's always nice to give a last look before you decide you're done. See if there's anything else that's calling out for attention, or any way that you could make this more unique or more your own. There you have it. I hope you guys enjoy. Have fun. All right, back again. So when you're all done with your collage landscape, you'll find you have a lot of leftover pieces. So you guys are welcome to take any of these leftover pieces and create your own new landscape. So I might think that this looks like a couple of mountains, and that could go behind this long valley. Or this might become a river. Okay, so you guys can take your extra collage pieces and create your own new and beautiful landscape. All right.